Okay, so I kind of wanted to start with your background and like what was happening politically when you were growing up, or what did you see happening around the community?
Well, I lived in a small town in western Minnesota. I think at that time I was probably concerned about, I was kind of against war
Mm-hmm.
and those kinds of things. I think my politicization was around workers, because one of my first jobs was at a migrant school, summer school for migrant workers' children. And I had a job as a seventh grader, or maybe ninth grader, as riding the bus in the morning and then picking up the kids who were like everywhere from a couple months old to like 12 years old, and riding the bus, taking care of kids on the bus going to school. And then it really caused me to see things I had never seen before in terms of housing conditions and little kids sleeping in drawers and just stuff like that. And so I think it made me relook at everything differently. Kind of
And
like that peaceful little
yeah.
town that you grow up in, you see it one way, and then all of a sudden you see this whole other side that you hadn't ever recognized before.
And what was your position on it? Did you feel like you had the ability to change it, or did
Uh,
you feel like you
I,
wanted to?
I
Or
felt like it was a wake up call, and it caused me to wonder, like, why are some people able to have a working wage and to be at school every year, all year round, and why do some kids need to travel to like 4 different schools per year and try to make it that way? I didn't know if I could do anything to change that situation. I didn't feel at that moment that I could, but I did feel that I could get to learn more about it, and it would cause me to ask questions and to see what people were doing to change things. So I really respected the people that ran the summer education program, because I
mm-hmm.
felt like they were providing great education and nutrition, for the kids. And one year I worked there as a records clerk, so we just had to make sure every government record, it was before everything was computerized, so we had to take really good records and make sure they could go on to the next schools so that the kids would, get credit for the work that they did in the summer.
Yeah, totally. How did you feel being a part of this? Like, did you feel like you were a part of something bigger than yourself? Did you feel like you had the capacity to make change? Did you feel comfortable, like, as an individual, working with all these people?
I felt really happy. I loved it. I feel like I got more involved when I was in college, because I had a really amazing professor named Paul Wellstone, who was a community organizer. He was a political science professor, and he taught a class called Grassroots Organizing and Protest Politics. And so in our very first year, we were learning about farmers' struggles in our state to keep their farms.
Mm-hmm.
We were learning about Hormel workers, meat packers, and their jobs, and how they were fighting for rights. We learned about the nuclear freeze movement. This was in the height of the nuclear freeze movement, where the arms race was really growing, and we actually were able to participate in protests at Honeywell and call for a stop to some of the weapon technology, like cluster bombs, that would hit someone and have like little BBs, that would,
Mm-hmm.
and we really fought against the proliferation of nuclear weapons. And so one of my first puppets I ever built was for the Nuclear Freeze campaign. We were doing a fundraiser and having a giant march that started at the state capitol, and I decided to build a giant puppet. And so I met a puppeteer, this guy that was helping us with our computers at the Nuclear Freeze campaign, and he knew how to build a giant puppet. So
Mm-hmm.
I built it, and he taught me how to put it together. And so that was it was sort of more through college age that I became more active, and we're seeing more examples of what people were doing to change things.
I think puppetry is a really important topic of this. I want to know what the function of the puppet was for the activism for the protest. What can a puppet do that Beth Peterson can't do? Or
Oh, well, this really, I've been doing puppets for many, many years, but when I first moved to Los Angeles, it was that year of 9/11,
uh-huh.
and this was the year of the first, when the U.S. was starting to send out troops to Iraq, and so people would gather at Hollywood and Sunset every Friday night and kind of protest the war. And I remember just one time bringing out a puppet there, and suddenly it changed. People came over, musicians came over, started to play music. I think there was something about, particularly the giant puppets, that helped everyone kind of come together, or it helped send the message in a big way that was way beyond what we as people could do. And also, you know, I noticed during the years of the big immigration rights marches in Los Angeles, when there were like millions of people on the street fighting for rights, that when we brought like the giant sun puppet out, it not only helped share the message, but it would become a landmark for people on the march. Like, they'd be on their phones like, where are you? And by that puppet, you know, and like a block ahead, and like, okay, I see you, and people would be able to find each other. And then last year, or a couple years ago, with the Occupy LA movement, they just decided to build like a giant puppet, and it was such a wonderful way to spend time with people at City Hall, just cutting bamboo and going through all the hard work and hours that it takes to make something like a big puppet. People really talked together, and they built relationships, and they exchanged ideas about our civic world and what our beliefs are, and how people's beliefs are different from one another, and where is our common ground and where are our different ground. And that puppet was supposed to make one appearance at City Hall, and it did, but it was pouring rain. And so like 30 people showed up, and they were all operating the puppet, and there was like one person in the audience because it was pouring rain. But the one or two person in the audience like was the organizer of the Rose Bowl parade. So they invited us to like be in the Rose Bowl parade. So suddenly that giant puppet was there as part of the Rose parade, and was in, you know, in the newspapers. It was on like national public radio and all this stuff. So I think puppets are great because you can take very serious issues, and you can share it. You can share it through humor, through love, through imagination. People are more open to images than they maybe are to a conversation. So I just think they're very powerful.
Right. What about the act of making the puppet, and what materials do you use, and how does this reflect or come across in the puppet?
Well, I made puppets since I was a little kid. People came to my town and did a puppet show, and I started making puppets. But when I grew up and became an adult and making puppets, I work with a theater called In the Heart of the Beast Puppet and Mask Theater, and part of the vision of that theater was to really recycle and to care for the environment, as well as to make beautiful, stunning puppets. And so a lot of materials that I make also are cheap, like it's clay, it's newspaper, it's brown paper bags. It takes a lot of time, like hour after hour, to make things out of the cardboard and the paper mache and paint. And I think that develops into two things in the final puppet. One is that you've built a community by the time that puppet, because it takes all your friends and anyone that's into, you know, to come by and paper mache, and you really sit for hours and you share your life stories with each other, and you discuss issues of our times. And so there's a very much each puppet, like each one of these, you know, giant puppets has their story, like who was there at that time, and what was important, and what was bothering people, and what was worrying, and what were people celebrating, you know. And I feel like just all that conversation and thought kind of ends up in the puppet too, as well as just the newspapers. Like every year you make a puppet, it's a different moment in time, and that newspaper tells that story, and those stories are also embedded in that puppet. So it's like little time capsules carried into the future. And so I feel like we like to call it low-tech, high-energy theater. It takes a lot of human energy, but it's very low-tech, and it's very simple ingredients. But how can you make really beautiful things with really simple things? And that's the challenge. You know, just try to keep getting better and better at doing that each time you make a new puppet.
Great, yeah. I really like that. I guess one of the last things I wanted to talk about was that just how you get into this reflective mindset when you're making paper mache. Just the nature of that material itself lends to it being more reflective, and just wondering how that comes across to like people who approach the puppets. Do the puppets represent this peaceful mind state that you're in when you're like making them, or do they represent the community that makes them all together in the end?
I don't really know. I don't know the answer. That's such a good question. But I do know, like for myself, I'm a community organizer. I organize community art projects. I teach. I do a lot of teaching. And for me, just the fact of being able to really slow down and to really concentrate on a sculpture, to really do the thousands of paper mache, and then finally when you get to the point of painting, it's such a joy, just to be able to paint and bring that color. And so I really think that these puppets carry through all these things. They carry through the patience and persistence, they carry through the struggle, they carry through the joy, and hopefully, I don't know, I just like to make them, but I don't know how people would feel seeing them, but hopefully all those things kind of come through to people.
Cool. Do you feel that your desires or your expectations are met through this form, through puppetry?
I just get so much joy out of making puppets. I'm happy. I love making puppets. I feel like it's a mystery. You can draw a design and you can think you're going to make something, but it's always going to be a combination of what you dream up and what it's actually going to be like. And so it's a really amazing mystery. And then when it actually goes up, it has so many more people, like people that sewed the costume, people that helped paper mache all day their Sunday afternoon. It has all that in there as well. Or people that helped came in and did some carpentry and like put the cross beams in the puppet. I think that in this age where we spend a lot of time on our computer and surfing and finding things and really fast and having to move and having to drive, I think it's very refreshing for people just to see something so simple, something that took time. It's like eating a really great home-cooked meal that maybe came out of some of the plants that were in your garden. It has that feel to it. And yet I feel like it can change with every person. Like all these youth artists that we have here, they're a new generation. They have a different life, a different set of experiences, and they're putting their experiences into their art. And is it going to look really different? Is it going to be amazing? And yet it's going to carry through some of that. They're part of a chain of people that have been going for thousands of years making puppets, but yet it doesn't have to look exactly like that other person from 600 years ago. It's going to look like what they're doing, and it's going to speak to the people now. And that's what's very exciting. And that's why I'm like here every Saturday, because I love it. I'm like, wow, it's not just dying out. It's something that's going to transform and hopefully serve people, in the future.
Yeah. Do you have any words of advice or encouragement for the next generation if they want to make change and they don't feel like they have the right resources? What wisdom can you offer them?
Well, change is big and change takes time, but change can also happen at all different speeds. I think the advice I would offer would be to look inside yourself and find out what inspires you, what makes you happy, what keeps you excited. Because I started out as a community organizer, that's what I thought I'd be, but I realized that unless I was making art, I wasn't really truly happy. I was kind of happy. And so I knew that if I wanted to be in community change as an organizer in the long term, I needed to have a time where I was making art. So I think you need to look at what feeds you and also what you're good at doing, and then find that combination of what you're good at and what you love. And sometimes they come together, sometimes they go side by side. But you want to last more than a year, you want to last more than 10 years, you want to last more than 20 years, you want to last a long time, and you want to have a happy life. So find good friends in the struggle. If you're a protester out there, find your other friends. If you're an artist, find your friends. If you're writing your book, then go out and do a reading when you're done so you can connect with people. But just find it so that you can day to day be happy, because there's hard work and struggle. But those struggles are things like, okay, how are we going to face this one today? Wow, what adventure are we going to do to get over this one? And so just, things that you enjoy, finding them.
Cool, thank you a lot. I think everyone's going to really enjoy what you had to say. And I really appreciate that you had the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, Ada, for your amazing work. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.